Hello, welcome to another How to Code Well YouTube video. My name's Peter Fisher and this is Pixel, the office cat. It's a debut video. First of all, I would like to apologise about this harsh lighting going on here. I'm in the, I've got some hardware that I'm waiting for to improve the video and the audio quality. But in the meantime, unfortunately, you're going to have to bear with me with that. Today I want to focus on hardware and what is the minimum requirements for a web developer these days in creating their local environments to set up multiple websites, because it's in my opinion that the minimum requirements have changed significantly compared to what they were 4 years ago, and by significantly I mean quite a drastic significance in minimum requirements, storage and RAM, and in some cases even CPU. 4 years ago, for example, we were able to do a lot more with perhaps a lot less resources. I mean, we can do a lot more now, but we need more resources in order to do that. So if you were to go out and buy a new laptop or desktop, what is the minimum requirements that you need? And I ask because I'm personally in the market for improving or getting another environment, another development machine in the office, and so I've started to think about what are my minimum requirements now and what they will be in, say, 4 years time, because I would like to have this device to last for 4 years, hopefully, and what they were compared with 4 years ago. And the two major changes that I think that's happened in the last 4 years that have gone mainstream and that we're using now commonplace. The first is dependency injection, and by that I mean, in the PHP sense, Composer. And Composer is a wonderful tool. It's fantastic for analyzing your dependency structure and then downloading those dependencies from various sources, mostly on GitHub, perhaps other repositories, working out their dependencies and ensuring that those dependencies marry up with your requirements within your that you've laid out in your Composer file. Now that is a hard and memory intensive task to do, and therefore it does require a lot of memory. Before Composer we had other ways of managing dependencies, such as Pair. Now Pair was a headache in my opinion, because it was very it seemed a little fragmented, a little bit messy. There wasn't a standard way of doing it. Well, there was. Some people were pushing it, some communities weren't. Whereas Composer just makes sense, and it just works out of the box. You can quite literally set up a project using a single line of code, Composer create project, and then the project name, or having a Composer JSON file and just doing a Composer install, and before you know it, you've got your environment, you've got your actual files set up and downloaded without much headache, or hardly any at all. But again, it's memory intensive. Just as an example, last year, before I even knew really what the innards of Composer from a low level, I had to improve my PHP memory setting, memory limit setting. I had it set to 512 megabytes. I thought, fine, that's half a gigabyte. That's fantastic. No problem. Not with Composer. I had to push that up to 2 gigabytes, just for the dependencies to work. Oh, as well as having Xdebug. Now I know that Xdebug and Composer aren't, they're both memory hungry, Xdebug is another application that's a memory magnet. But 2 gigabytes at that time I thought was huge. A huge requirement for a website, just not even running the website, just creating the website. So yeah, and then I discovered, you know, the reasoning behind it and what Composer actually does under the hood from a low level, and yeah, I can appreciate why it needs that much memory. Will that memory be more in, say, 4 years' time? I don't know. I would hope not, but I don't know. I don't know. 4 years ago, I would have just laughed at the fact if someone said to me, you need 2 gigabytes of RAM just to install all of the requirements for a website without even running it. I would have gone, are you nuts? But, you know, the convenience factor has won me over, and therefore I'm very happy to throw gigabytes of RAM at it, because I use it day in and day out, and it's very quick, and for all the time it saved me in painful dependencies as I would do if I was using, say, Pear, then yeah, I'm quite comfortable with that, or I am now at least. So the next other thing that is a memory a magnet is virtualization. Now I know that we had virtualization 4 years ago, but not in the same manner as we do now, especially with the likes of Composer and Puppet and all of that stuff, and Vagrant. Yes, I had virtualization 4 years ago. Yes, I was running a development environment. Even my IDE was virtualized in that, but it's not where it is today. Today, it's a very different landscape for virtualization. Virtualization is containerizing, siloing applications at a very small level. Let's move that down a little bit, because if you think of a website and you split the website up into its own domain, so you have the web server, you have the data store, you have the queuing system, you have the backup system, and all of those kind of things. You can containerize each one of them. You can even go even further and start containerizing the applications that those applications use. So for example, PHP, you could containerize PHP so you can swap in versions in and out and so forth. But each one of those needs to have an image, and each image takes a bit of space, obviously, on your hard drive. Now if you've got several projects, web projects that you're building, excuse me, then you might find that you're duplicating some environments, especially if they have little nuances, or maybe you can't use the base images that you've created for other projects because you want to have them you know, the beauty with Docker is that you can pretty much, well, almost replicate the infrastructure that is in production locally on your local laptop. You can run pretty much the same thing. Obviously, there's going to be configuration changes. There's going to be scaling changes and so forth. But you know, it removes the argument of, well, it was working on my local machine, but it doesn't work in production. That argument is kind of gone using Docker. But again, there is a storage overhead. It isn't rare for a Docker machine to be, I don't know, 1 gigabyte more, 2 gigabytes. So if you're working on 5 websites, that can quickly amount up. And so when you've got your dependency injection and you've got your virtualization going for multiple applications, So I'm talking about multiple things. Obviously with RAM, I appreciate that you're only working on the one thing at the one time, but with storage, that's different, okay? Because obviously storage, it consumes storage even if you're not using it, because storage is consumed. With RAM, it's different, obviously, because you're using the RAM at that one time, whatever. So these factors, these web development factors, are things that we didn't have to consider, or didn't have to consider as much 4 years ago. Where is it going in 4 years' time? I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, you know, and what is the minimum requirements these days? Because let's be honest, 8 GB of RAM isn't going to cut it, in my opinion. It's not going to cut it when you've got Composer requiring 2 GB of RAM. When you're also running the IDE, you've got your operating system, you'll have various other tools and things like that. 8 GB of RAM today is probably the very bare minimum, in my opinion. 16 GB of RAM, yeah, okay, you could certainly get on with 16 GB of RAM, that's fine. My machines run 16 gigs and they don't choke, but will they in the next few years? I don't know, I'm not sure. 32 GB of RAM, is that too excessive? I'm not sure, but I do know that when I moved from 4 GB to 8 GB, I realized my performance of 4 GB was so drastically reduced compared to going to 8 GB. Maybe we'll have that from 8 to 16, maybe we'll have that from 16 to 32. Maybe we're getting to a point where, because these maintainers that maintain Docker and the dependency injection, their argument, which is quite right, is that storage and memory is cheap. Well, yeah, fine. But the thing is, when you're working on your local environment, you've got to make sure that it's going to keep running smoothly for years, for say 4 years, right? So if 8 GB is the very, very bare minimum now, what is it going to be in 4 years' time? You know, if I was asked 2 years ago, is 32 GB too excessive? I would have gone, yeah, it would have been. But now I don't really know. I don't know. But what does that actually mean? Do we want to be in that position? You know, that in order to create a website, we need to have that amount of capacity. You know, 8 GB of stuff and several gigabytes of storage space just to set up a website. That's quite a big ask, isn't it? But I'll be interested to know what you guys think. Leave your comments down below in the section down below, and let's have a little discussion, because I'll be very interested to hear what you guys think. If you're going out to buy a new piece of kit, have you had these thoughts? Are you looking at going totally mad with the RAM, or are you happy with where you are? Do you think that 16 GB is too much? Do you think that 8 GB is too much? But remember, I'm talking about making or building and maintaining multiple applications, you know, at once. So having multiple Docker machines running, having multiple Composer bits running frequently, you know. So for example, if I have a client who wants an update, I can quickly go ahead and do that. You know, I can switch projects quite easily. But yeah, leave your comments down below. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. All right, speak to you soon. Bye.